The Jets head out to Arizona for a game against the Cardinals, seeking their second straight win. Will this be the next step on the long road to a comeback or a step back? Let's break it down today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Friday, November 8th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. Big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Our episode today is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Well, today we're going to break down the Jets' Week 10 matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. Kickoff time scheduled for 4:25 Eastern on Sunday. The game will be shown on CBS. We'll talk about some of the challenges Arizona may present the Jets. We'll talk about some of the areas where the Jets have an edge on Arizona, at least on paper in this matchup. But we're going to begin by talking about the stakes of this game. And when you're the New York Jets at this point, every game is critical. This is a 3-6 football team. This is a team that is 2 games out of the last playoff spot in the AFC. But after last week, there's at least some reason for hope because the Jets put together an excellent second half against the Houston Texans. They at least showed that they're capable of playing good football, which is something that has eluded this team through much of the season. Now, in the early part of 2024, I was guesstimating 10-7 would probably be what it would take to get you into the AFC playoffs, because in any given year, 10 wins is probably going to get you into the tournament. But there are years where maybe you don't need quite as much. And that seems like one of those. This seems like one of those years in the AFC. One of the things about the NFL adding the 7th team in the playoffs in each conference a few years back, there are a lot of years where a conference just doesn't have 7 good teams. And the AFC in 2024, that's a conference that doesn't have 7 good teams. So if the Jets get on a run here, they might be able to turn it around. And I don't think it's going to take 10-7 anymore. I think if you're looking at the layout of this conference, 9-8 probably gets you in safely. The challenge for the Jets is that they're 3-6. So what's it going to take to get 9-8? Well, it's going to take 6 wins in their last 8 games. And that makes not just this game critical, but every game critical. Because if the Jets win this game, then you're talking 5-2 over your last 7. Look, it's still going to be a long road. And I don't want to give anybody with an illusion that this is going to be easy for this football team. I don't want to give anybody with an illusion. I don't want to give anybody an illusion that this is even likely. Because if you look at most of the analytics websites that cover these things, they give the Jets between about a 1-5 and 1-6 shot of making the playoffs. And those scenarios where the Jets make the playoffs require them to go on a big run. And I would argue that those analytics sites are actually probably overestimating the Jets' odds of making the playoffs, because I think a lot of them have baked in information about Aaron Rodgers' past performance. I think a lot of them have the idea that Aaron Rodgers is somewhat likely to go on a big run. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily true right now. I think the player Aaron Rodgers is right now is not the player of the past. So all of this is to say that this is going to be a tough road for the New York Jets. I think it's going to be easier to go 5-2 over the last 7 than to go 6-1. Every loss further decreases your margin of error. And that's why some of these early season losses have been so devastating to this football team. That's why the loss in the game against Denver was devastating, especially because the Broncos right now hold the 7th seed in the AFC. And now the Jets lose a tiebreaker to them. So it's not just that the Jets are down 2 games. Jets are down 2 games and lose the tiebreaker to the team currently holding that spot. That's why it's devastating. The Jets came out so flat against Minnesota, and then their comeback fell short. It's certainly devastating, the way they played the second half against Pittsburgh, or particularly that game against New England, that inexplicable loss 2 weeks ago against the New England Patriots. If the Jets just have 2 more wins right now, we're probably feeling pretty good about their playoff positioning, especially coming off that win against the Houston Texans. When you lose this many games early in the season, I know it's easy to say, it's early in the season, it doesn't matter. It does matter, because the losses still count, and you just give yourself a bigger mountain to climb. Again, right now the Jets need to go 6-2 over the last 8 games. This is a much easier scenario if all they have to do is go 4-4. If they just add 2 wins to that total, we're probably feeling really, really good about their chances. But more than that, the Jets need to show they can stack good performances together, because this team has not shown an ability to do that whatsoever this year. This team has really not shown an ability to play 60 minutes of solid football. They really have only done that once all year, and that was the Week 3 game against the New England Patriots, where they dominated what turned into one of the worst teams in the NFL. Heading into that game, the Patriots actually kind of were looking better than we were expecting the first 2 weeks. That was a team that beat Cincinnati and took Seattle to overtime. And heading into that game, there was a feeling, at least from me, that this Patriots team might be tougher than we expect. Well, we now know they aren't that tough. And that was really the only time the Jets put together 60 minutes of good football. The only other times the Jets have put together a good half of football, I mean, I would say maybe the first half against Pittsburgh, and even then we have to throw out the last minute of that half, and then the second half last week against Houston. It's one thing to put together 30 good minutes. It's another to stack good performance after good performance after good performance. This Jets team, they have a lot of big names. It's not an untalented team. Now, I think that maybe the talent was overestimated heading into the season because Jets had a lot of big names. Part of the reason the perception was that the Jets were so talented was that they have a lot of guys who were really, really good in the past. And these guys are just not as good this year. So I don't think this team is as talented as it was made out to be heading into the season. I think that and I think especially in New York, there's always a chance people are going to get carried away heading into a season because, the New York media loves to generate hype. The two things the New York media loves to do are build people up and tear people down. And before the season, they love building people up. They love, hyping up all the teams. Then when the teams don't perform, they love tearing these teams down. At the end of the day, I don't think this team is anywhere near as talented as we thought it was heading into the season, or where we hoped it was heading into the season. But it's not a non-talented team. It's not. These are not the Mike McCagnon Jets. These are not the Adam Gase Jets. These are not the John Idzik Jets. There's a decent talent base here. If you want to tell me this is one of the 7 most talented teams in the AFC, we can have a debate about that. I think they're in the discussion for being one of the 7 most talented teams in the conference. But of course, they have not played like that so far this season. They have not been able to get out of their own way. And I think one of the frustrating things about this Jets team is that really, as much as other teams have beaten them, the Jets have beaten themselves in a lot of these games. A lot of really dumb mistakes, a lot of unforced errors. And even in the first half last week against Houston, we are all very happy about what happened last Thursday night against the Houston Texans. But it's easy to forget. The Jets were down 7-0 heading to halftime of that game. I mean, if you were watching the Amazon studio show for that game, those guys were all talking about how the Jets looked like they were finished. They had 32 passing yards in that first half. Then in the second half, they finally rose to the occasion. Now, unfortunately for the Jets, the team we saw in the first half is much closer resemblance to the 2024 Jets than the team we saw in the second half. And that's got to start changing because the Jets can win games if they play one great half, but they can't go on a winning streak. Going on a winning streak requires you to play great football consistently. If you play a great half, you'll have games like Houston where you win, where the half is so overwhelming that you'll just carry over into a victory. You'll bank enough points that a win will come. But there will also be games where you play a great half, like the first half against Pittsburgh. It's just not good enough for a win. So, look, the Jets need to win games. There's a pure mechanical aspect of this, that the Jets need to win 6 of their last 8 games. But to give us confidence that the Jets can win 6 of their last 8 games, they have to start playing high-quality football. And that begins this week. Look, we've been through weeks where the Jets had extra rest before, and they have typically not played all that well coming out of it. That has to change. They've had 3 extra days to prepare for this game. They've got a little bit of momentum after a good performance on Thursday Night Football. Last time we said that was the Week 4 game against Denver, a game that, by all accounts, the Jets should have won, and they did not win it. That can't happen this week. Now, this Arizona team is tough. Look, they do have a winning record. This is a road game. This is a trip across the country. But you know what? If you want to be a playoff team, this is a game where you have to show up. This is a game where you have to deliver. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll talk about some of the challenges this Cardinals team presents. This is an interesting matchup because I think there are some clear areas where the Jets have an edge, and there's some clear areas where Arizona presents them with some matchup difficulties. And we'll start by talking about what those matchup difficulties are as we continue here on this Friday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Arena Club. If you like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Luka or Mahomes rookie card just isn't in the cards. You may love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Well, thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card I listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and a clear hit rate for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with their transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. And right now you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL, code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. This episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by Hims. Sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously. Hims provides access to treatments that give you a boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need to feel uncomfortable at doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you every day. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Jets are in Arizona this weekend, 4:25 kickoff time on Sunday on CBS. Although this game does not have a very wide broadcast footprint, the big CBS game at 4:25 on Sunday is Dallas versus Philadelphia. So unless you live in the New York area or the Phoenix area, you're probably going to need to rely on NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube or YouTube TV, because this is not a game with a very wide broadcast footprint. And part of the reason that the Jets are off to a very disappointing start this season at 3-6, and they really need a victory in this one. If the Jets lose in this game, I mean, they're not officially eliminated from the playoff race, but it becomes even tougher. And the Jets' road is already difficult enough, even if they win in this game. So this is a game the Jets need to win. Arizona, though, presents them with some challenges. I could see this game being a shootout because I think the Cardinals match up well with the Jets on offense, and I think the Jets match up well with the Cardinals on offense. So I think both defenses could be in for a long day. I think one thing the Jets need to look out for is Kyler Murray's ability to run the ball. Kyler Murray's once again having success as a rusher this year, and we've seen this. The Jets have been very undisciplined in their pass rush lanes this year. Look, you have to maintain some degree of composure when you're getting up the field. You have to stay in your lanes. Each pass rusher is designed like kind of a lane that they need to occupy. And too many times you see these Jets defenders flying up the field trying to get sacks and leaving rushing lanes open. And, that especially hurts the Jets when they play man-to-man, because, when you're in zone defense, typically there's at least going to be a defender in the zone in front of the quarterback to take away the run. When you play man-to-man, the receivers just all run all the defenders off. So if your pass rushers are not disciplined, you get yourself into trouble because there's nobody there to take the quarterback. And, I know people always complain, where's the spy? When the quarterback runs, why aren't you spying? Can we stop with that? The spy is like one of the worst defensive calls in the league, because essentially you're taking a player you're essentially playing 11 on 10, because you're taking a player who could be either covering or rushing the passer and not having him do either. So the spy is not the solution. The spy is stay disciplined in your rush lanes. Spy is do your job. Spy is take your assignment and cover it effectively. Don't fly up the field. Jets need to be disciplined in the rush lane. They have not done that this year. Kyler Murray can take advantage if that happens again. Another area where I have some concerns for the Jets on defense, the run defense. We talked about this on Wednesday. There was a mailbag question talking about the Jets run defense statistics. And, on paper, this Jets run defense doesn't look that bad if you're just looking at the numbers. And there have been moments where the Jets run defense has looked pretty good this year. I think that's true. But the problem is this Jets run defense, they have like good moments within games, and then they have terrible moments within games. This Jets run defense is capable of like stopping another team's rushing attack for like a half, but then they get run all over in the other half. Whether it's the first half against the first half against Minnesota, where Aaron Jones ran all over them. Then they played better in the second half. The Denver game, they actually shut down Denver's run game pretty well in the first half. Of the second half, the Broncos ran all over them. Broncos had two running backs with just about 5 yards per carry. The Pittsburgh game, again, it's it's not that the numbers look okay because like half the time they actually shut down the run really well and half the time they don't. Jets defense needs to do a better job against the run because the Cardinals will run the ball and James Conner will run all over them if not. And the guy I look to is Quinnen Williams. And I don't think it's any accident that the Jets defense playing as well as they did, especially in the second half last week, coincided with Quinnen Williams starting to play up to Quinnen Williams' promise. Early in the season, Quinnen Williams got to a really slow start, and I kept making excuses for him. I kept saying Quinnen's going to be fine. Maybe I should have been harder on him early because at the point where I started to worry about him about 5-6 weeks into the season, that's when he started playing well. In the last 3 weeks or so, we've seen a much better version of Quinnen Williams. And I don't think it's any accident. The Jets defense started to look more like the Jets defense since then. So, but it is a challenge. Look, this is a Jets run defense that's been inconsistent all season long. The Cardinals are not afraid to run the ball. They're not afraid to go behind James Conner. Just hand him the ball. So that's something the Jets need to look out for in this game. Another thing that's interesting about the Cardinals is the Cardinals are one of those rare teams where the passing game kind of runs through the tight end, Tre McBride. Now, I think, the future going forward, we talked about this yesterday on the crossover show with Alex of Locked On Cardinals. In the future, you would think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to become the go-to guy. But for this year, Tre McBride is the centerpiece of the Arizona passing game. He leads the team in targets. He's kind of Kyler Murray's most trusted receiver at this point. And I think the Jets actually could match up with them. I think the Jets have actually had pretty decent play from their linebackers in coverage this year. Quincy Williams is, once again having a good season. A guy we don't talk enough about on the show is Jamie and Sherwood, who has really stepped up in the absence of CJ Mosley. And it's happening at a good time for Sherwood because this is a contract year for him. Jamie Sherwood's become a really, really solid linebacker. I remember when he was drafted in 2021, everybody was crushing the Jets because they drafted a safety and converted him to linebacker. Well, you're kind of seeing what the plan was with him because safeties tend to have better cover skills than linebackers. So if Sherwood was able to adapt and learn how to play downhill, learn how to play effectively in the box, he could be a good linebacker. There's a guy with safety cover skills playing the linebacker position. So I think it's very likely we'll see the Jets lean on these linebackers. But look, it's a unique opponent. There just aren't many teams that run their passing game through their tight end. And I think the teams that do it. A lot of the great teams in the NFL, Kansas City for one, Baltimore for another, where the tight end is kind of their best receiver. This is a case with Arizona where you're going up against a unique team. It kind of takes you out of your comfort zone as a defense. Even if you have the players to handle it, even if you have Quincy Williams and Jamie and Sherwood, you still have it's still a difficult team to prepare for because they do something unique. They do things that you're not used to them doing. And also I think another matchup to watch for in this game is Sauce Gardner versus Marvin Harrison Jr. And we know Sauce is just not having a good season. Sauce, it's not just that he's having a bad season for Sauce. He's just having a disappointing season overall. He has not looked like the top flight corner we've seen the last 2 years. I've talked about this on the show, how I keep hearing people say Sauce is overrated. Well, being overrated implies that you did not deserve the accolades you received. Sauce Gardner was dominant the first 2 seasons of his career. He was a great cover corner. He was one of the top 3 corners in the league. This year it has not worked for him, and part of it's teams have forced him to tackle in space, which is just not what he's good at. But he hasn't been covering as effectively. This is a chance for Sauce Gardner to step up, but Marvin Harrison Jr., an excellent rookie, he'll be a difficult matchup. And I would not be surprised if this Arizona team was able to put points on the board. Now, the good news for the Jets, I think this Arizona defense is actually a very good matchup for them on the offensive side of the ball. As we continue here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll talk about why this game could be a dream scenario for Aaron Rodgers ahead here on this Friday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just a jobs board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and may not have the time or resources to hire. So LinkedIn is constantly finding new ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. It's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Jets on the road in Arizona. They are underdogs despite their Week 9 win over the Houston Texans. Arizona favored by 1.5 points at home. Get FanDuel's the place to get in on the action. $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Friday. New York Jets in Arizona this weekend, 4:25 Eastern kickoff time on Sunday. Jets and Cardinals, a game the Jets really need to win. If they get this win, they get to 4-6. Still a very long road for this team trying to make the playoffs, but 4-6 is going to be easier, at least a little bit, than 3-7. Now, I think this Cardinals team presents some difficult matchups for the Jets, but I do think the Jets offense should actually have a pretty big day against this Arizona team. A couple numbers I was looking at, profootballreference.com, they keep a track of the rate at which each team generates pressure on the defensive side of the ball. Cardinals are 8th from the bottom right now. And that's a good thing for the Jets because the Jets offensive line's in a bit of a state of flux. They've had to rotate guards in and out the last couple of weeks, couple injuries. It's not clear, who's going to be in, who's going to be out this week. So, when your offensive line is bringing in new guys, and I think offensive line injuries are kind of a double whammy because for starters, whenever you put a backup in, and this is true at any position, the backup's typically not as good as the starter. If he was as good as the starter, he'd be starting. So first of all, you're taking a downgrade in talent. But the second thing is offensive line's a position where chemistry and continuity really matter, more so than almost any other spot on the field, because there's so many decisions that you have to make within a split second. You have to understand what the guy next to you is going to do on any given play. You have to be able to communicate very quickly. If a guy leaves your area and somebody else needs to pick him up, that needs to be passed off very effectively. So when you put in the backup offensive lineman, you're not just downgrading in talent, you're breaking up the chemistry because the new guy probably hasn't practiced with you all that much because the first team offensive line practices with itself. The second team offensive line practices with itself. So you're bringing in all these new dynamics. So a game against an Arizona team that's not particularly great at getting after the quarterback, that's good. And it's also good because if the Jets protect Aaron Rodgers, Rodgers has shown he can still make throws. He can still get the ball out. Other aspect of this is the Cardinals 8th from the bottom net passing yards per attempt, according to Pro Football Reference. They don't have very good corners. And this is the type of game where Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams should feast. And, I think we've seen over the last couple of weeks, Rodgers and Wilson really starting to get more comfortable with each other. And, maybe that play where Garrett Wilson in Pittsburgh, where the ball, he should have caught it hit him, popped in the air for an interception. Maybe that was the thing that turned Garrett Wilson's season around. Maybe that was the best thing that ever happened to him because he's looked like a motivated player ever since then. We know he got off to a little bit of a slow start this season. We know that he and Rodgers were frequently not on the same page, but it's really started to click. And early in the season, I think a lot of us were wondering maybe they should have played together in preseason. And I think that's playing out because it hasn't taken that long for the two of them to get on the same page. But over the last couple of weeks, you've really started to see Rodgers trust Garrett Wilson, and going up against a group of corners that frankly is just not very good. This could be a game where Garrett Wilson feasts. And Adams, we know he's got the chemistry with Rodgers. Now, it did not look that way last week. In fact, it hasn't really looked that way through the first couple of weeks. And I think maybe people undersold the idea of how difficult it would be, or at least people underestimated the transition period it would take between Rodgers and Adams to get on the same page. Because last week's game, there were just some real bad miscommunications. There was the play where Adams was run blocking, Rodgers was expecting him to look for the ball. It was a drop Adams had. There was a play where Rodgers missed him. But in the second half of that game, Adams started to it felt like they started to get on the same page in that one. A couple of really key plays. Rodgers hit Adams on that 4th down play, and then he hit him for the touchdown late in the game. It felt to me like in the first half of that game, Rodgers was almost trying to force feed the ball to Adams. And that was something we saw with Garrett early in the season when the two of them weren't connecting. I felt like there were moments where Rodgers was maybe trying to make it happen a little bit too much by just trying to get Garrett the ball, even if the situation did not dictate that. Then the second half, it started to happen more naturally within the flow of the game. And Adams was able to put together a big second half. Again, those 2 key catches. I don't know. It just feels like this is the type of game where things are lining up really well for Rodgers. I think this could be one of Rodgers' better games of the season because at this point of his career, we know what Rodgers can do and can't do. He just can't really move that well. Now, maybe the 3 days off, the extra 3 days after the Houston game, have you at least given him a chance to get a little bit healthier? He's dealing with like 3 lower body injuries, 3 issues, on that leg. Maybe he's a little bit better in this game, but even before the injuries, it's not like he was moving that great. It's not like he was moving with the speed that he showed during his Green Bay days. So that means that you got to protect him, because he just can't outrun defenders anymore. You see, he has trouble outrunning 300-pound defenders. But when he's got protection and when he feels comfortable with his protection, he can get the ball where it needs to go. And we know that Rodgers has been hesitant to throw the deep ball. We started to see the deep ball come out a little bit more last week. Maybe he's getting a little bit more comfortable in the flow of this offense. Maybe just because he has Adams and Wilson now, 2 receivers that he trusts, that he feels a little bit better about throwing the ball down the field. Well, the only way he's going to feel better about throwing the ball down the field is when he's protected. There's a play that really comes to my mind in the early part of the season. It was the game against the Minnesota Vikings where Rodgers had one of the worst games of his career. And his best play came on a play where the Vikings only rushed 3 guys. And Rodgers was able to kind of stand tough in the pocket. And it was something that we hadn't seen through much of the early part of the season. But he felt comfortable because the Vikings were only rushing 3 guys. Well, if the Jets' offensive line controls the Cardinals' pass rush, he's going to feel comfortable. He'll be more likely to stay in the pocket and try to push the ball down the field and exploit these Arizona corners. I don't think this is going to be true every week, but I think this is the type of matchup that could be conducive for an excellent Rodgers game. At least the Jets should hope so, because I do think Arizona's offense should have a big game in this one. This could be a shootout in the desert on Sunday. It should be a fun one to watch. But that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. It helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Enjoy the game. We'll be back after it to talk about what happens between the Jets and the Cardinals.